Welcome to Green Building Matters, the podcast that matters for green building professionals. Learn insight in green buildings as we interview today's experts in LEED and WELL. We'll learn from their career paths, war stories, and all things green, because green building matters. And now our host, and yes, he has every LEED and WELL credential. Here's Charlie Cicchetti.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of the Green Building Matters podcast. I'm really excited today to be joined by a green building leader. Mahesh Ramanujam has joined us. He's the CEO of the U.S. Green Building Council and several other roles. Mahesh, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Charlie. Thanks for inviting me to Green Building Matters.
We like to talk about careers. And so let's talk about a little bit about your upbringing. You know, Mahesh, I went to Green Build in Boston, and I got to see your presentation about your ties back to India, your transition over here to, making a career in the U.S. and now where you are leading the entire LEED movement. So can you talk a little bit about your upbringing in India and how did that really launch you maybe into a career in sustainability?
Thank you so much, Charlie. Again, it's always great to talk about my beginnings, humble beginnings. And what happened was, as like everybody else, I was born as among one of the 1.3 billion people in India. And as you know, India is a country which has got 70% of people below the poverty line. Right. And I would consider myself to be one of those families. I've been brought up in such families in India. So my beginning was very, very humble because my father hardly made $50 a month. But what he gave to me was values. And also he taught me the basics of lessons about saying that there is always somebody out there in the market who has lesser than yourself and how you should feel fortunate about what you have. And more importantly, preserve what you have so that you can actually take it forward. So the whole idea of paying forward started with my parents. And since then, sustainability is basically a way of life. It's what I have believed in all my life. And then here I am, thanks to my parents who have funded me lavishly by giving me the education and also giving me the opportunity to actually come in as an immigrant into this wonderful country, America, and be able to really grow into this leadership position. So the journey has been about humility, carrying your values, understanding that the planet is for you to share, and most importantly, inspire the people around you and give them a fair chance at whatever they don't have, because you can give them one. And that is, to me, sustainability. And of course, connecting that to USGBC's mission is very powerful, simply because USGBC mission is similar to what my values are about, which is preserve today's resources so that we can live abundance for tomorrow. So I want to leave the world with a sense of abundance and do my part. And that's my journey.
Wow. Thank you. That's amazing. I teach a lot of LEED classes and we talk about reduce, reuse, recycle. And I think a lot of people, Mahesh, forget we need to do it in that order. Reduce the amount of things we need, the materials we need, reuse what we can. And I know you had to do a lot of that in your upbringing in India. Let's talk about India. Obviously, you've opened an office for GBCI, who certifies our projects, gives out our LEED credentials. You have a passion to grow LEED internationally, but you've really got a good foothold in India. At GBES, we help people pass LEED exams. If I look at my Google Analytics data, India is actually number 4, the 4th most popular country to search for green buildings and LEED. And let me pass a test. But Mahesh, actually, not everyone is taking the credential. So a lot of people are coming to our website, but they're not all taking the credential. How can we bridge that gap? And can you tell us a little bit about some initiatives in India?
I think first and foremost, thank you for recognizing our India team. Our India team is growing faster and stronger because our goal to put that kind of talent in India is India has always been seen as the exporter of technology, services, and skill sets. But it has got a highly qualified engineering capabilities, right? Architecture capabilities, technical capabilities. And third is that in India, like my parents did, everybody singularly focus on improving the wealth, the educational wealth of all their children. So a country that is driven through education so much is the best place for us to actually invest so that we can actually distribute talent around the world, right? And that's the idea of the GBCI India. GBCI India is there to serve India as well as the regions and also be able to deliver that technical capability to the broader movement so that because we need capacity to deliver sustainable skill sets all around the world. Now, your second part of your comment, which is to say that why are people not taking sufficient credentials? What can we do to help them to actually move the needle? I think there are opportunities for us and GBS to look at it. If they are coming to your website, should we work together to figure out, either understand that why they don't pursue a credential? Maybe it's something to do with cost. Maybe it's something to do with access to resources. Maybe it has something to do with examination centers that are not easily accessible to them, or they are not able to understand and appreciate the value of the credential itself, right? I mean, some of these things just comes to my mind. Yeah. So from that perspective, what I want to promote is that to be able to talk, that let's kind of do a little bit of deep analysis into the analytics. And what I will say to you is that we are absolutely excited to partner with GBS to deliver an integrated solution, so that our goal is to have increased number of lead professionals in the marketplace, so that sustainability becomes a mainstream conversation even more than what it is today.
No, thank you, Mahesh. I look forward to the continued education partnership. Mentor, what does that word mean to you? Did you have anyone that was an influence on you maybe earlier in your career that you could name was a mentor?
I think the first and foremost is my father was the first mentor for me, right? My father taught me everything I am, and whoever I am today is because of my father. And as we go through this journey, the mentorship is very important. So the way I look at mentorship is not anybody that you are connected to, but anybody you are inspired by, whether you are directly connected with them or not. So from that perspective, I have seen leaders, many leaders through my career, in IBM, in my initial stages in my career in India, where there was a gentleman who was the managing director of a consulting firm called, a stock trading firm called Harvey Consultants. His name is C. Parthasarathy. And also, I have seen numerous mentors, and until recently, Rick Frederici, our founder and our leader of the Green Building Movement, has been my mentor and still remains my mentor. And then I am very fortunate to have so many friends and our board members to be my mentors. So to your point, the word mentorship means to me is that a person to whom you can actually be confident about to approach and be able to share your ideas, thoughts, fears, and be able to get a candid feedback to really look at yourself and say, I'm not going to improve myself, but I'm going to have a better calibration of what my strengths and weaknesses are, so that you can focus on your strengths, and then you can continue to figure out how you can actually engage other people to compensate for your weakness. So to me, mentorship is about giving you honest feedback and calibration, and giving you a perspective of what your strengths are and how do you better hone into your strengths while overcoming your weaknesses by engaging the broader team and broader people and community.
Thank you. No, those are powerful words, inspiration and influence. Some mentors may influence you and they may never know.
Yeah.
Mahesh, you've had a great career. You're leading the green building movement. What would you say your specialty has been so far in your career? What's your gift?
I think I don't give up on people. My gift is I am relentless, I'm committed, I'm focused, and I never, ever, ever give up on people. And what it has done is that it has paid me back in a huge way. Because what I do is that I'm always honest with people. I'm very direct. I tell them the way it is. Sometimes they don't like it. But then after a few years, they look back and say, well, there is somebody who tells me the way it is. So that has been my strength. And that's why I never give up on people.
That's amazing. I like that answer. Thank you. Let's talk a little about the business strategy, the IT background, right? You were in that industry, transitioned over to the USGBC, and now you're heavily involved with ARC and LEED Performance Path. If we think very high level, Mahesh, what would it take for LEED or maybe even ARC to be 10 times more successful than it currently is? What has to break through? How do we really scale these programs?
I think it's very simple from our perspective, right? I'm glad you touched technology. Technology 20 years ago was a differentiator. 10 years ago, it became a requirement. Now, it's your innovation partner, right? Yeah. But when you look at technology, look at our parents, they were very reluctant to even use the PC, the PC first era, which you and I picked up. And then recently, in the last 10 years, the mobile computing picked up, called the mobile first. But I think the future is about AI first, which is artificial intelligence first, right? So the direction is that we want to make things easier for people. So rather than designing technology platforms and making humans adapt to it, we need to build the technology platforms that adapts to human beings, right? The human-centered design is the fundamental construct. So when we do that, when we make things easier for people, take an example here, Amazon, take Apple. they have actually leapfrogged industry trends, market trends. The simple reason is because they focused on simplicity, they focused on designing for humans, and third, they focused on absolutely leapfrogging it. So to me, what I am singularly focused on at USGBC is to really not asking people to change their behavior, but give them tools that helps them to understand what behaviors they have to change, and then any smart individual will change them. So that's where we are headed. And I think you will see some exciting things in the next 365 days about how we are shifting gears. But ARC is our first step, because LEED and ARC are exactly opposite. LEED, so it tells that Charlie, do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. ARC says, do whatever you want, but we are going to tell you how tall you jumped and how high you jumped. And it's going to be a tall order. And the world needs both. It's not either or. So we are trying to experiment that concept of saying being prescriptive and outcome driven, and then eventually integrating them for the greater good. Why? Because we want to change human behavior to transform this marketplace.
No, you're absolutely right. We have to measure, and maybe that's what ARC can do, the actual performance. I work on a lot of LEED for existing building projects, Mahesh, in, say, New York City. And I think some of the fear is, what do we do with all this data? And so there's just more education that's going to have to happen. Here's what that means with the continuous air quality in that room of your 50-story building. What do you do with the data? Some are afraid of the data. So do you spend time looking at big data within the USGBC? I know Arnold and some on your team, you have a lot of data. So what data stands out to you? Where are we winning so far?
I believe let's be very candid about it, right? Big data, everybody's chasing big data. My mantra at USGBC has been is focus on the small data.
Sure.
Right? Because the big data is not humanly accessible. You get into the blogosphere, you get lost. But what is meaningful to you is very, very important. Now, of course, we have to grind. We need to take the raw material in. We need to process them to get to a finer product. So ARC is about the small data. So what we are seeing is that LEED Platinum buildings are performing. LEED Gold buildings are performing. LEED Silver buildings are performing, right? And they can perform. So what we have been telling for the last 15 years is actually true, right? And we are able to measure the market and say, look, these people are able to actually, when they input the data, they're able to see for themselves, either they're performing or they're not performing, and quickly adjust their operating protocols to show that they're performing. Take, for example, our own building. It's a LEED Platinum space. It almost took to a gold when they installed the system. And basically, they're going to get a call from me and saying, what the hell? And immediately it went to 87, right? Until last week, it was 86. We improved something. It became 87. So where we are winning is tracking what we already have and actually demonstrating that we are performing to that level. Now, whether it's energy, whether it's water, it's all built into the ARC platform. It's the energy, water-based transportation and human experience. And I see a very consistent play across LEED buildings that are using ARC, that they're maintaining their LEED certification. Right? That's the first win that we are trying to recognize in the market. And I'm very pleased to hear that we have got 1 billion square feet of LEED certified space in ARC today, just within 12 months, 2,200 projects that are absolutely committing to demonstrate that they are winning. So that is what we are saying. Now, what we need to see more with this big data is we need to drive bigger trends and drive the deeper business case to people. When people come back and say, why do air quality audit? Why do water audit? Why bother doing a transportation survey? At that time, you basically be able to show them that, look, by taking these incremental steps, it actually helps you to deliver a better building, which is the philosophy of LEED anyway. But to prove the business case a little bit more in a deeper manner is the next big step. And I think we are a little bit far-fetched on that. So to sum it up, what gets measured gets improved. What gets improved gets done. What gets improved and done gets replicated. That's our direction.
Small data versus big data. I love it. Let's talk management versus leadership.
Yeah.
Big difference, right? The word influence. So I have a young staff of young professionals. You do too. So let's talk a little bit about those getting into the green building movement, but especially millennials, which are making up the largest percentage of our workforce. How do you lead some of your young professionals on your team? What motivates them?
I think the biggest difference, what we have seen is that I would say that I was very fortunate to imbibe sustainability in my core values because of my upbringing. But people have different starting points. So some of them feel sustainability is far-fetched. But if you sit with an young professional today, whoever it is, and tell them that, look, you have to care about others, they are instantly gravitated to that. They want to create impact. They want to come back and be seen different. They want to contribute. They want to be given the freedom to go and fail. So to me, whenever I approach young leaders, it's very clear to me that they are very clearly driven by purpose. But what we need to give them is a permission to fail and be there when they fail. They help them not to criticize, but they help them to actually recover from that fall and go to the next step, because every failure is a successful milestone to next. So that's what I've seen as a leadership style that works within the company. So when I tell people that we want to manage for failure, the first thing people ask me is, what the hell you mean by that? And I always say to them, right, show me the worst ever failure that you can achieve in your life. Come and show me that. Then we will explain that later. Because everybody plays safe. People use these keywords like innovation, buzzwords about transformation. I want to come back and do these big things. But then when I tell them to go and execute, they stumble. They don't think big enough. They don't have enough confidence in themselves. So you actually then get an opportunity to meet them where they are and then tell them that, okay, now take the next big bold step. And don't worry about failing, because there is somebody else right behind you watching you to make sure that you don't fail that bad, that will either risk anybody's career or their own personal confidence, or for that matter, revenue, right? So to me, that is what I'm seeing. So I'm seeing a lot of energy and excitement, but very few people want to fail fast. And creating that culture is a singular thing I think the green building movement or even the larger world needs, because that is where transformation actually kicks in.
Well, I like to think of myself as a leader, and I'm working on it. John Maxwell's there's 5 levels of leadership. I'm moving up the scale, but I feel with EQ, emotional intelligence, you have to make the time to look for where you can help empower a leader. I know those are words you've used before, empowering more leaders. At what point do you go and seek out some that you want to level up to be leaders? Can someone start becoming a leader at any point in their career? A little more about leadership, if you would.
I think absolutely. To me, leadership is, I'm a Peter Drucker student and I'm a Jim Collins student, right?
Okay, sure.
When you look at Peter Drucker says in the book he wrote, Effective Executive, he says everybody is an executive, right? We are all called knowledge workers. That means you are a CEO, I am a CEO. So the person who actually does best with his time is a winner, right? So it's a basic 101 from a leadership point of view. Second is that why everybody is a leader is because anybody who can reflect on strengths and weaknesses and commits to improving his strengths is a true leader. So that's where the EQ and all those things comes, right? Self-awareness, and then being able to understand that what are your strengths versus weakness, and then don't spend your time trying to improve your weakness, but start working on your strengths and contributing towards it, right? That's the second part. So the third part is that the leadership is also about humility for me, right? If you can be humble, if you don't know how to follow, you won't be able to lead. If you don't know how to serve, you won't be able to command. And if you're not able to stand up being authentic, transparent, and committed to success and demonstrate through lead by example, then you can't be a leader. So those are basic fundamentals. Now, in a big broad brush, as a Jim Collins student, I believe anybody can be a leader at any level. There are 5 levels of leadership: level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5. To save time, I'll just talk about level 5. Level 5 leaders have a personal commitment and push things through sheer will. So the question is that if anybody can calibrate themselves, some people will never get to level 5. That is okay. But there are level 1 leader. There is a level 2 leader. There is a level 3 leader, level 4 leader. But we want everybody to be a level 5 leader, because at the end of the day, an organization or a movement works on only one principle: people first, strategy second. So, and that's the philosophy. So I think that is leadership for me.
Thank you. No, you're well read. I love Jim Collins and John Maxwell, and there's some great leaders. Mahesh, clearly you can push a lot of things with will. Where there's a will, there's a way. Let's talk about education. We have an education partnership. You have challenged providers like my team, GBES, to provide best-in-class education. And we're doing it, and we're trying. And we accept that challenge while we're not directly on your staff. So where is the industry falling short? Where would you really like to see some more advanced education?
I believe what has happened is that GBS has done a good job. GBS has been doing it for a good amount of time. The point is that everybody is still stuck with the old model, right? They are all still trying the old model where they need to make every course development to be 100 hours of investment and then 100 hours of deployment. So that supply chain model has to go. In the new era of education, where the MOOCs are there, where people are learning through a YouTube video, where people are learning through the agile methodologies like the EDXS and the MITXS and all these XS platforms, where people actually want to come in, engage, get short-term courses, and be able to get credentials, be able to get some recognition, and then be able to move on, right? So Google is our biggest learning platform. So if you don't know anything, you Google immediately, you read it very quickly, and etc. So to me, what happens is that one, quality matters. Good quality education can never be replaced. It's always a differentiator. That's why you and I talk about Jim Collins and Peter Drucker, because they wrote something that is so powerful. You can read it again and again and again. And every time you go back and touch it, it gives you a different perspective. That is great content from an education point of view, right? It's a simple lens. But the second part to me is very, very important, which is that you have to understand the world is overloaded with information. And people like you and me are so busy that we don't have time. So we have to make the learning happen in short sprints. Or you need to create a Games of Thrones type of excitement around it so that people will be stuck in the couch and be reading it, right? Either or. So I think the difference, the balance there is going to be, how do we drive excitement? How do we attract new audiences? How do we improve and deliver new ways of learning methodologies? And how do we do it in an agile manner? Because the millennials today don't do anything on the computer. They do everything on a phone. So it has to grab their attention. And they learn it. They're doing tweeting, they're doing LinkedIn profile, they're actually doing Snapchatting, they're doing an email, and they're also playing a game. It's like a multi-faceted learning capabilities they have. How do we punch that attention span to our advantage is something that needs to be thought in a very revolutionary manner. That to me is education model delivery.
Yeah, it's a great
content, obviously.
Yeah, and I can't wait to share with you some of the things we're doing with gamification. You have a good point. The word is evergreen. The Drucker work, the Jim Collins, it's evergreen, and it has to be smaller, bite-sized. We're doing blended learning. So we've got some pretty neat things coming out because you issued a challenge with our partnership, and GBS has been around for 10 years. We just celebrated 10 years. It's amazing. But you know what? You can't get complacent. You have to make sure. I believe the statistic, Mahesh, you may know, 45% of the bandwidth on the internet in the United States is split between YouTube and Netflix. So we're consuming video. We need education too.
I think it's going to go to 75% soon. I think that's the world we are going towards.
Okay, just a little bit more here. Let's talk about books. Maybe is there a book recently or an old one that you've read or listened to that you would highly recommend? Maybe it'd even make a good gift.
I believe the best book to read to me is there are many books. I read quite a bit of books, but I think from my point of view, I would say that the first and foremost book to read is The Effective Executive of Peter Drucker. And he talks about the managing oneself, why managing oneself is so important. And I think is such a foundational book. And of course, as Jim Collins player, I would always recommend people to read the book, Good to Great. Right? You can't beat that book. You can read it 100 times and it is still the best book out there. And the third book I would say is The Innovator's Dilemma by Clayton Christensen. And that's a great book, Innovator's Dilemma. And I think those are three powerful books I would recommend even during this time. It's very powerful. It's evergreen. And I think there is some strong lessons there.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Good to Great. A lot of us can relate to it because there's companies that we buy from as consumers. And so you can be like, oh, wow, how did they break through and become that great company? Let's talk a little bit about just routines, rituals. You're a very, very busy man. International travel. Do you have any productivity tips? How do you stay on task?
I think I don't have a choice, right? I mean, if I fall behind, I'm immediately noticed and called out, and I don't like to be called out. So I'm very disciplined that way. But you're right. From a productivity point of view, what I've learned is that the most important thing I've learned is for first 20 years of my career, I thought multitasking was the biggest skill set I had in my hand. And I thought I used to brag almost saying that I am the best multitasker you can find on the planet.
Sure.
You can imagine when you're young and sometimes a little bit more ahead of yourself, you tend to think that some of these things are good things. But what I've learned is that multitasking is evil. You need to be present. Mindfulness is critical. So don't be on the phone while talking to people. Don't be texting. Don't be on the phone all the time. Don't be on emails all the time. You have to set aside critical times to do critical things. And what I've learned is that I started with a to-do list. The first thing I did is I fired my to-do list because the to-do list management itself became a stress for me. So what I do is I pick one item at a time. And until that is done, I don't focus on anything else. That doesn't mean that I'm not thinking about other things. But what I'm getting done is always one. And once it hits the finish line, then I go to the second item. So if you move through this cycle, what you realize is three important things. Very quickly, when you look back in the year, you realize you have accomplished more than what you would have normally accomplished. And you're more satisfied by that because you've closed that. Second is that it's very clear that you realize that your ability to focus has improved. So your concentration is powerful. Your concentration improves naturally because you're not trying to chase everything that's around you, but you're trying to keep the signal and the noise separate, and you're focused on the signal. Third is that you also really have a very clear organized expectation around your team, and you are communicating them consistently that you are tracking things that they think you're not tracking because you're focused on one. It's very easy to track them, and you're also able to help and step in and help the team. So what I've learned is that is such a powerful exercise of sticking to one and not more than three if really push comes to the shove. But understanding that then if I moment, the most important part is one gets 100% quality. The moment you add two, the second item cannot be 100% quality. It has to be 80% quality. Third, it goes to 60% quality. Now, the only reason I would pick three is because I'm happy to take a 60% quality or an 80% quality on item 2 and 3. But being a Virgo, I aspire for 100% quality on everything. So, so the bottom line is, I know that I'm going to be pretty unhappy very quickly because the fourth one is going to be 40% quality. That means I shouldn't be doing the task, right? So it's all about quality and focus and concentration, and importantly, getting things done.
No, that's fantastic. Focus, one thing, and I don't know, you've got a lot I'm sure you're accomplishing. So thanks for sharing those tips. Let's see, two more questions. One, let's have a little fun, Mahesh. Bucket list. I'm a fan of a bucket list, even though I'm a younger entrepreneur. I have 110 items on my bucket list. I try to do 5 or 6 a year, some adventure, maybe some a little more personal. Is there one item on your bucket list that you could share with me?
I think my bucket list is happening already. My bucket list is continuing to go around the world and meet so many people and make things happen for them. Because one of the precious things I've enjoyed in this job, and I still enjoy in this job, is that when I go out there, I meet people who give us tremendous respect, tremendous recognition, and who are absolutely excited about what you've accomplished in the life. You just feel like a rock star every single time you meet a new person. So that has always been my bucket list, that how do I go and inspire people, engage with them, connect with them, and actually ask them to do better than what I would have done myself. So that bucket list is happening. Now, at a big picture level, at some point in time, I want to meditate in the Himalayas for at least 2 days. Meditation is my passion. So someday I'll get to go to the foothills of Himalayas and in the hills of Ananta, be able to meditate in a cave for 2 days will be something very exciting to do. But I don't think it's going to happen in the next 10 years.
That's amazing, though. That's a bucket list. Thank you for sharing. Last question.
And I don't have anything more on the bucket list. That's in my bucket list.
Those are big items. I love relationships. I love conversations. This is fantastic. Our closing question, Mahesh, we help people get into the green building movement or advance their careers in the green building movement or just ask better questions on their projects that they're bringing online throughout the world, these green building projects. But any career advice, maybe something you wish you would have learned earlier in your career, but also those jumping into the green building movement. Any closing advice?
I think the most important advice I'll tell everybody that I always say is that take a chance. Do something. And if you fail, that's okay. Go further. But if you need help, reach out to us. Reach out to GBS. Come to us. But staying without taking an action is not acceptable. Failure is okay, but inaction is not okay. So take a step forward. There is a broader green building movement there to support you, enable you, and we welcome you. So all you have to do is reach out to us, and happy to create an opportunity that you never had before, but you have to take the responsibility and you have to lead.
Take a chance. Mahesh, just want to say thank you for joining us on the Green Building Matters podcast. I appreciate the partnership our companies have, and definitely just want to say thank you. I'm excited that you're leading the USGBC and ARC and all the other initiatives. So thank you for the partnership and for being on the podcast. Thank you.
Yeah, Charlie, just one last word from my side. Thank you for doing this. You're a leader, true leader, because you're doing a very important cause for our young minds, our young hearts, the future generation. So I'm very impressed with this podcast. I hope many people will participate and engage with you. And thank you for your leadership. And most importantly, thank you for inspiring the next generation of green building leaders, because we are all in.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Green Building Matters podcast. At GBES.com, our mission is to advance the green building movement through best-in-class education and encouragement. Remember, you can go to gbes.com/podcast for any notes and links that we mentioned in today's episode, and you can actually see the other episodes that have already been recorded with our amazing guests. Please tell your friends about this podcast. Tell your colleagues. And if you really enjoyed it, leave a positive review on iTunes. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on next week's episode.